Hello, everybody. This is Nate Paris again. Welcome to the second issue of our Director's Dialogues for the film Oasis in Atlanta. This is a Q&A session about the documentary, which is much anticipated launch in January 2026. Again, I'm your host, Nate Paris, and today's dialogue is going to be with Bob Shands, who is the author and director of this film, Oasis in Atlanta. And we also have the lovely Janelle Batts, who is the co-owner, of Red River Media. They are the executive producers of the film. So welcome to the both of you. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to
Thanks
have a
for
really
having
nice
us.
Nice to
conversation.
be here.
I'm
Mhm.
excited about this conversation today, especially we're going to talk about a lot of creative things that make this all work. So, listener, if you're new to watching this, and I invite you to go back to watch our last issue of the Director's Dialogue. You can follow us on Substack. We're also on Facebook and YouTube as well. And there you will be able to find Bob's full background and his inspiration for creating this film. To briefly introduce Bob, he is the author of In My Father's House, Lessons Learned in the Home of a Civil Rights Pioneer, and he has recently embarked on this documentary project that is going to come out in January 2026. It has been decades in the making. And then we also have Janelle Batts to talk about the creative aspects of this film and how this all came about. But first, I want to take a second look at the trailer. We have a beautiful trailer already ready to go. You can find it at bobshands.com. We'll put a link in the description. But we're going to take a moment to watch the trailer, and then we're going to have Janelle and Bob talk about it. So we're going to be right back, and we'll get back to the interview.
My father was a giant in my eyes. I grew up on the second row of the pews of the church, looking up at him. At home, he was very loving, he was demanding. I think the things I learned from my father were to tell the truth. I was raised with a strong sense of right and wrong, an idea about how to treat people. In Georgia, the racial tension was somewhat understated until the Supreme Court decision of 1954. And the reason I say it was understated is that blacks knew their place. And I say that in a bad way. It was horrible. The Supreme Court decision of 1954 led to things like a desire to shut down the whole public school system in the state of Georgia, to avoid any kind of integration and mingling of the races. That was an ongoing effort for years, and my dad took a strong leadership position in the efforts to not only peacefully desegregate the schools, but keep the schools open. Dad had mentioned the Minister's Manifesto of Atlanta one time to me that I could remember. We were in a car driving in Alpharetta, Georgia, and he just casually mentioned that he had that day or that week been to a reunion. But I believe it was the 35th reunion of the 1957 Minister's Manifesto. I knew that I was looking for something about the Minister's Manifesto. I didn't know anything about it. So I really started out with just a time frame. I knew I was looking for the Minister's Manifesto. When we moved to Atlanta in 1953, Dad had already been involved in trying to work on race relations. He was a member of a standing committee between white and black pastors in Atlanta to create a dialogue. One of the members of that committee from the black side was Martin Luther King Sr. He had become convicted by the Holy Spirit in the area of race relations many years earlier. Within the Baptist church and the white Christian church in general, there was a great deal of disagreement and tension in the area of civil rights and race relations. Dad was always on the side of treating every human being as being created in the image of God. Was always on the side of better, more Christ-like relations between the races within the church and the church's role in that. Since 1997, I've been attempting to tell this story. Today is the culmination of that effort. It's finally reaching a point where it can be told effectively. And I believe that God has brought this to pass. I believe that this is a moment that was destined. The Minister's Manifesto of 1957 was also a statement on the part of white Christian ministers in support of the Brown versus Board of Education decision of 1954, and a statement about a Christian's responsibility in the area of civil rights and race relations. As a result of the research that I did and the miraculous events that led to my being able to bring the story full circle, I wrote a book, In My Father's House, Lessons Learned in the Home of a Civil Rights Pioneer. It was published in 2006. It was the historical story. This is the spiritual story. Dad's story is secondary. This is the spiritual side of it. This is about God. This is about God making an impact. What can happen? This is the evangelical story. This is what can happen when you give your life to Jesus Christ. A teenage white boy from Columbus, Georgia, from a racist family. And he began making efforts to change Spartanburg, South Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia. And he succeeded in lighting a match, in my opinion, in the ministerial community in Atlanta. So it's a story about my dad, yes, but it's a story about Jesus Christ that I think the world needs to hear.
All right, we are back. So, again, listener, thank you for joining us for the second issue of our Director's Dialogues. I'm here with Bob Shands and Janelle Batts to talk about some creative aspects of the film Oasis in Atlanta that you just watched. If you were hanging on with us and you just watched that trailer is absolutely gorgeous. Janelle and Kevin did a fabulous job bringing everything together, bringing all the narrative together, the storytelling together, and in such a beautiful way. So I just wanted to say that first. But what we want to do is talk more about how this all came to be, but I want to get into some history, okay? So, Janelle, I would love you to tell us more about your film company, how you and Kevin decided to put this together, and just a little bit of background about Red River Media. And then we'll have some more questions for you. So tell us more about Red River.
Oh gosh. It's interesting because we started in media actually under the Obama administration. And anybody who would call themselves a political activist or any kind of activist, really, of any kind, would tell you that during those years it was very heated. There was a lot of stuff going on, just across the nation, a lot of stuff going on across the world, and I never knew that we would end up in media. I mean, if you would have told me that years ago, I would have been like, you're joking. I'm not going to be doing anything media related. I was a young mom and we were, living in Texas. And I remember I was watching the news one day and I remember I was like, man, somebody needs to do something out here, about any of this. And you don't want to say those words out loud in front of God sometimes because he will take you up on that. And that's really what happened. It was like, I heard the Lord say, why don't you do something about it?
Mm.
And I did not know what that was. I didn't even know what that meant back then. I really did not. I was like, I have no idea like what part I'm even supposed to play, and you kind of think what we all think. Well, like God, there's plenty of people out there doing things. What difference can I make? Everybody else is out doing the same thing that I'm going to do. So what's the difference?
Yes.
So that went into it started with journalism. It started with journalism. We started to write stories about what was going on back in our home state of Oklahoma. Um, we started to write articles for the next probably 5 years in there, and then that turned into actual videos where we started filming and producing videos, and everything was self-taught. We like to go back and watch some of our original work. It's pretty entertaining when you go back and you start looking at that, because you realize how far you've come and how far we still have to go. It's a learning process every single day. Like, you never stop learning, but everything that we've done was self taught, and really just realizing that God had given us a gifting and a passion to work together as husband and wife. We didn't know how that was going to go either. It's like, how are we going to work together? A lot of husband and wives don't often work together very well, at times, because you're hitting up against each other's, egos and your issues and insecurities. And I will say that, working alongside each other taught us a lot about humility, because you had to learn how to know when your partner's gifting needed to be implemented in those moments, and you had to be able to take a step out of that and say, no, this is your gifting that's needed here, not mine right now. But we learned how those two giftings come together, and that went on to documentaries as well. I would call myself what do you call it? A controversial person. I've never seen myself as a controversial person, but everybody around me is like, "Oh, you're controversial," all the time. And so it's funny because sometimes, you think that you're just going into places and that you're causing the controversy. But what I realized was that I would walk into spaces and the controversy would come towards me without me asking for it. I would find myself in rooms with people wanting to tell me stories that I did not ask to hear about. You know what I mean? It was like, why are you telling me this information? And it would be information about, governments and whistleblowers and all this crazy stuff that I was like, I just came here to do A, B, and C. And now I'm sitting here talking to this person. And that happened to me and my husband over and over and over again. And that's what led to Saving Clayton, which was a documentary that we did about a family um, in Oklahoma, who essentially, they lost their due process as grandparents, and almost lost their entire lives, to a system that didn't allow them to be heard. And that went on to Trans Oklahoma, where we uncovered a trans community that had detransitioned in Oklahoma, when a lot of people didn't even want to admit that trans people existed in Oklahoma. Um, there was a lot of different controversial things that we touched on all of that. But what we realized was that we live in a time where we're not really necessarily controversial people. The problem is that we live in a society where truth is now controversial, and now common sense is now controversial, and it used to not be that way. So truth makes people uncomfortable, no matter what the truth is about. And this is one of the reasons why we love Bob's story, because it's like, it's historical, it's undeniable, it's not even like, it's factual. There's nothing about it that says this is, fluff. This is, oh, it's trying to push a narrative. No, it's literally real. It's a story. And I've always said this many times, even on all my platforms, is that there is nothing more powerful than a story. Your ability to tell your own story is going to be one of the last things that we have as a nation. Because even if a person, even whether a person's alive or not, their story still lives on. It still remains. So that's what we love about Bob, and even meeting him, watching God cross our paths, and not really know why. Because, Bob and I were Facebook friends for, gosh, how long before we even arrived at this juncture. So it's really neat how God does that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to take a moment here to brag on Bob. So
Yeah.
I've been aware of this project for a little over 3 years, if not longer, and just the attention to detail that Bob instilled into this project. the meticulous record keeping, and the compiling of all of the documents and files and notes. That is painstaking work in anything in the media, to be able to have it all together already. Having your own stuff together is already difficult. And then you're managing your own files in addition to, and your own research in addition to your father's research and his notes. And then of course any microfilm and papers that historical notes and newspapers, all of that goes into putting together a documentary. It's just astounding. You're talking what decades in the making, decades of record keeping. So I just wanted to take a moment to brag on that. But I also want to brag on you, Janelle, with two very good, well done films already. So this film would be the third full feature film, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you've done other, smaller projects, smaller size
We
projects, but this
have.
would be the
We have.
third.
Yes.
And you're 10 years or more, probably
Yes.
over a decade into
Yes.
filmmaking and everything. So,
Yes.
could you go into what you would consider to be the common denominator for the films that you kind of touched on it, and but I want to really edify that for the listener, what the common denominator is for the films that you produce?
Definitely the story. I, you know, I have to say, I got excited about this doing this film with Bob because it was a change of pace for us. And it is not to say anything negative about Trans Oklahoma or about Saving Clayton, but I loved the fact that this story was so uplifting. You know what I mean? And the messaging, yes, there was uplifting messaging that was in Saving Clayton or in Trans Oklahoma, but there was a lot of trauma that was attached to those stories. And that's the one part about storytelling that's difficult, because when you're the person that's responsible for helping to take a person's story and put it on a screen, there is a level of that trauma that you have to walk through with the individuals that are telling that story, and it's very hard to do that. Creating Trans Oklahoma was probably it was a very painful experience for me in particular, because I saw the brokenness and all of the dark parts of these people's lives and who we were studying. Um, and it was heartbreaking, when you start poking around in dark places and you start realizing how dark it actually is. Um, but there was an uplifting side of that, right? But sometimes in storytelling, it is difficult because you are dealing with people who have gone through horrific things. Not every story always has that uplifting feeling that you always want. But the story, though, is always powerful because it's unique to each person that you meet. You've got, Saving Clayton with this family that was affected, and it's about DHS. Totally different area over here. Trans Oklahoma, you're dealing with people who tried to transition themselves to the opposite sex, literally supernaturally came back to God, with hardly any help at all. So it's like there's these nuances of all these different powerful stories. And it's there, it will never be taken away from any of those people, regardless of the outcome. I think another aspect that I love about storytelling, and this applies to Bob's story, is that there's the storytelling never ends, even generationally, and time doesn't stop the story at all. A story can be taken from 1913 and somehow be embedded into society today. That's powerful. You can't do that with everything. You can't take maybe a clothing style from 1913 and go, we're going to implement this here today. But a story, you can do that on any story at all, because it's still about the human experience. You can still have a story from today, even about a trans person, and apply it to a man maybe in the 1800s before anybody knew what that was, and say there was a man in the 1800s and he liked to dress in women's clothing. No one knows that those two things could be attached, and yet here we are still telling the same story over and over and over again. That's what's powerful about Bob's story, is that it transcends generations, it transcends time, altogether. still tells a story that is desperately needed now. So again, to me, it's just the power of storytelling in and of itself because you can't kill it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
beautifully stated, and,
Yes.
storytelling is just so very powerful. That's why this has to happen. This story has to happen, and so, I just think it's a beautiful thing that you've come on board to this project.
yes.
But I also wanna hear from Bob. I wanna hear Bob's side of the story as far as how you guys met and why you chose Red River to help carry this story for you.
Well, kind of goes back to when there was a 5 year period, after 5 or 6 year period after I wrote the book, and Facebook was becoming more and more of a thing. When I first joined Facebook, I really didn't use it for the first couple of years, and then I started dabbling with it, and um, I have. Uh, Maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I've been what I would call a conservative in my thinking and my politics since 1976. I worked on the Ford campaign in 1976 in my county. And, if you check my website, there are blogs about how and why I became a conservative and et cetera, because I was raised in a very, very staunch Democratic Party household. But, and I do use the term conservative rather than Republican, but I I became enamored with Facebook, and I had the idea that I wanted to get the message out that um, the phenomenon of uh, conservatives who are people of color is not the unicorn type thing that most people think it is. There are quite a few people. And so I formed an organization. I originally made it a not for profit, and I really didn't do much with it, but it's called um, Conservatives versus Racism. And I really was astounded to find out that how many people just don't think that conservatives can be against racism. And so I originally I started out to just highlight some of the people that you would easily recognize that are conservatives that have reached a certain amount of fame and following. Tim Scott at the time, Herman Cain, and there were quite a few. And I'm one of those people that believes the Lord sits you down and says, um, "This isn't what I want you focusing on." And so I kind of set it aside for a while, and then I came up with the idea as Facebook came along. I wanted to find just what I would call normal people who were had who were people of color who had conservative leanings. And Nay, that's how I found you, and Janelle, that's how I found you, and Kevin,
Mhm.
and so many of my Facebook friends, hundreds of my Facebook friends, who meet that criteria. But I won't go into the whole litany of all of the stops and starts with the documentary, and literally 17, 18 years in the making, and the challenges that came with that. But I was already following you, Nay, and following Janelle, and um, kind of came to the front of my consciousness that yes, Janelle is controversial, and I like that, and that I started getting drawn to Kevin's photographic eye, and so it kind of became more and more clear to me that this actually was a media company, and maybe, just maybe, they might have an interest in this project. So um,
that's how all of us came to be. Uh, and I just feel very blessed, extremely blessed, to have this team working on this project. The creativity, the conviction, uh, the witness. Again, I just feel truly, truly blessed.
Amazing, Bob. Thank you for sharing that. It's really important to have the people that you trust, to help you with something so very important as this documentary, this retelling of these facts, but also um, one thing that I wanted to say, I wanted to brag on Kevin a little more. I love that you mentioned Kevin's photographic eye. Okay. One of the things, and if you're listening to this and you got to hear or listen to the trailer, or even actually watch the trailer, um, it's something about how Kevin is able to set the right mood, because civil rights is that's a topic that really needs to be approached with care. Okay. We're talking matters of things like racial reconciliation, and but also we're talking about the Christian influence of those who fought for civil rights, and the way that he artistically puts it together in terms of the narrative, in terms of the questions that were asked, the mood that he set so far. I'm getting really excited to know, what this is all going to come to be. But just already so far, I'm captivated. I'm already, watching this with like, okay, this has my attention. My attention is arrested here. But
Mhm,
that it takes that he does it in a way that he takes this topic seriously,
mhm.
with the right somberness and the respect and the dignity that this topic deserves. Um, I know Kevin is not here with us. Maybe he will be on in a future dialogue. But
Absolutely.
Janelle, if you
Yeah.
want to speak to how he does this, how he makes this happen, because the appropriateness of it is something to be spoken for. And I work in a creative space, and I work with different creatives in film and videography for commercial reasons. And it's really critical that that person has that eye for what is appropriate and what is respectful
Mhm.
of the topic at hand. So if you want to speak to, I mean, he know obviously he's not here, but hopefully we'll have him on in the future. But I mean, being his wife, I'd love to hear your perspective as to how you guys take the creative angle of this so seriously.
I will say that, we've always known when God had us involved in something, because believe me, there were certain projects that we didn't necessarily want to be a part of because it was difficult, but we knew we were supposed to do it. And Bob's story is one of those times where, mind you, it's the most excited that we have felt in a long time to be able to tell the story. Um, Not just its historical aspect, but I, again, you spoke to this, but I think what's kind of blown me away is Bob's ability to maintain this for so long. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know people who have a story from 2 years ago and they've barely been able to manage it. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, to take a story, to take the legacy of your father, to take a historical legacy as well, and to not only want to honor your father, but you're honoring um, what took place, a significant act that took place in the middle of a civil rights movement, a very crucial time in the nation. That's huge. And, Bob, I join with Nay in just applauding you on that, that you've held on to this story for this long and you've maintained it. And I'm sure you would say that there were plenty of times that you did not feel like you were maintaining it at all. But yet here we are having this conversation, and that's amazing to me. And so I will say this is that we always know when God is on something because we often don't know what to do. Like we get a story in front of us and we're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do that? How are we going to tell that story? Like, how are we going to do it? And we never know. And then the Lord just begins to drop it in. I mean, like literally, like pieces of a puzzle. And I will tell you this, that's the way that Kevin would explain it to you. He did not know, he every single project we've ever done, he did not know what he was doing. He was like, I don't know how to tell the story. I have no idea. And then it was like all of a sudden parts would begin to come in, music would begin to come in, switching this around would begin to come in. All of a sudden, it would begin to flow, and it was all done. Just, I mean, just God just coming in and doing it. I mean, Drew will tell you. I say Drew. Heaven will tell you. I'm used to calling my own husband by his middle name. Anyway, but he will tell you that it literally has been God. I mean, literally giving him the creative ability. A lot of people think that, he went to school for this and he went to, no, my husband didn't know anything about a camera. Do you know what I mean? Like 12 years ago, he taught himself how to use like 5 or 6 different cameras, and every feature and how to edit and do all this stuff, mind you. But it's because the gifting was already on the inside of him
Yes.
and God was just cultivating that.
Mhm.
And so I am not the techie side. I will tell you that. I am not the person I don't know what anything on the camera is doing.
Mhm.
But I'm a writer and that's what I've always been. And so he's taken that ability where he taught me how to insert not only the story, but the emotion and how to draw the viewer in, keep them in, and finish the story strong. So again, merging those two giftings together, but it's all been God. I mean, there are days where I don't even know what day of the week that it is when we've been doing these projects, right? And yet somehow we're able to put things together. We'll go back and watch our own documentary and be like, I don't even remember how I even did. I don't even remember where we even got that from. Like, you know what I mean? Like literally you'll rewatch something and go, yeah, I have no idea how we did that. I have no clue how we put that together. And it's because God just literally did it all. So
If, if I could interject something about Kevin here,
Yeah.
we're applying for grants, and there are a lot of different questions that come up, and we applied for one in August, and they required an artistic viewpoint, and um, I had reason to use that again today in another application, and I was just blown away by Kevin's explanation of the artistic viewpoint, the camera settings, the hues, the music. Um, so you say he didn't know much about a camera, but I, I wish I could read that to you right now because
yeah,
what he has evolved into from a technical and um, camera presenting, that's not the term I would like to use, but it's what comes to mind. Uh,
yes.
just blows me away. Um, as I said, I just feel so very blessed, so very blessed.
Yes,
Yeah.
Kevin's work is, it's impressive to me, and I'm in this on a routine basis. I've been in my field for 15 or so years, and you find few that can pick up a camera and go with it,
Yeah.
and have studied it, because there's a study in doing it,
Yes.
versus you can go to school, which is what I did for
Mhm.
communications and journalism. You can do that, but the application is really where the learning begins.
Yeah.
And so there's room for all of it, but the fact that he took the time and made it happen, and he let God put his creative hand on him,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
let that creativity flow through him, really really speaks
Yeah.
volumes. And then seeing it manifest itself into this
Yeah.
film
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
something unreal. Just and in the photos, you guys, listener, you haven't seen the photos yet, but we'll reveal some photos down
Yeah.
the line. But I was just really impressed with not just the photography, not just the videography, but the photography as well. Him being able
Yeah.
to capture the beauty of that moment, and then the mood of the moment as
Yes.
well, because we also have to keep in mind how Bob is feeling while he's
Yes.
in these spaces here. He's, this is, very important to us all, but no more important to anybody than Bob.
Yes.
And to be able to
Yes.
capture that, not just through the film, but in the photos, to capture the moment that all of this is coming together is, there's just something. I don't know if eerie is the word, but I received a text message with some of the photos, and I was just like, wow, you know what? I felt like I was there, and I'm like, I would
Yeah.
imagine the emotions, the feelings that are taking place within Bob.
Yes.
That those are
Yes.
things that I'm thinking about when I'm looking at these photos, when I'm looking at the space that was chosen for the film, and
Yes.
why it was chosen, and those things
Yes.
matter. So just from an artistic standpoint, Kevin, both you and Kevin have earned my respect, and for the listener, you will be very impressed with what you see. If you go back and watch the trailer, share the trailer with others. We're just really anticipating this film coming out. There's really not much left to it other than for us to release it. We have some more work on our ends to really make it happen, and to add more creative elements, more interviews, more background to make this happen. But this is just really a beautiful thing coming together. So I'm going to ask one last question. I want to talk about the Christian aspect of the films. I asked a question earlier, and I wanted to just kind of expand on that, about the undercurrent, the common thread with all of the films that you've worked on, Janelle. And one of those, that common thread that I'm sensing, in addition to what you're saying, but I'm sensing it as the viewer, as the audience, is Christ.
Mhm.
Christ being at the center of it all, and Christ is most definitely at the center of this topic here with Oasis in Atlanta. In that, the actions of those, in that time frame, were led by Christ.
Yes.
And so I
Yes.
wanted to talk a bit, or really wrap up here, about you know Christ's work in your work,
Mhm.
and what that means for this film, in your opinion.
I would definitely say that God will always, it's amazing how he always connects you with people, um, whose story, there's always this intersection with the Lord when they're telling their story every single time without us even looking for it. I just want to reiterate that the first two films that we did, we weren't seeking out people that were Christian. It was like nothing to do with that. We were just seeking out the story. And yet, Saving Clayton, the basis of this family's survival was going back about, it was them leaning upon their faith in God to get through it, and them still standing today to receive their grandson back into their lives after such tremendous loss. With Trans Oklahoma, it was the exact same way. We got a lot of pushback, because people were basically like, "Oh, you guys went and made some kind of, you made some kind of Christian fluff film about trans people," and I was like, actually no, we actually didn't ask anyone if they were Christian. We didn't do any of that. We said, God, bring us the people that you want us to tell their story. And literally every single person that came into our lives were people that ended up detransitioning, um, literally because they came back into a relationship with God. And it just totally saved their lives. Like, nobody did anything for them. Yes, they had support from family and different things, but it was like, we didn't choose that. You know what I mean? And we're the kind of people that we don't like to try to control the narrative or try to control the story. Yes, there's certain elements that you have to control from an artistic perspective, whether it be time or place or whatever. But we don't like to control what someone is saying necessarily, because generally what's flowing out of them is the truth, and that's the most powerful aspect of the entire project. And so there were things that people were like, "Oh, did you coach those people? Did you coach those young ladies to say what they said?" And I was like, "Ah, absolutely not. Actually, we didn't ask them. Not a single question was about God. Not a single question that we asked those young women was about God, and yet it just poured out of them what their experience was that brought them, back to themselves, right?"
Yes.
And so it's the same thing, with Bob, is that one of the things that stuck out to me that Bob said to me early on when he first started talking about the project, and I remember I said, Bob, what is the message that you want are you trying to give to people, through not only the book, but through this film? If we do this, what is the message? And anybody could have got up and said, oh, well, I just want it to be about my dad, or I just want it to be about, the civil rights movement. I want it to be about the fact that I need to prove this. It was none of that with Bob. All that it was about was he said was, I need people to know that Jesus Christ is real. I need people at the end of the day to know that there is a transformative power in Jesus, because that's what he watched his dad do. He watched the transforming power of Jesus in his father's life, and his dad went on to transform things as well. And it was like it all went back to Jesus for Bob. It wasn't all about, yes, there's the legacy of his father, which is powerful. Yes, there's the legacy of what took place in Atlanta. There's all of these different amazing historical aspects that anyone could point to and say, that's a story. And all of those are a part of the story. But it's the fact that immediately he went back to, this is about Christ. It's not about anything else. I want all the generations to know this is about Christ. And so I'm just glad that God continues to lead us to people um, that want the world to know who Jesus is. And you start to look at your own work, not as your business, but that this is our ministry, and not just about the filmmaking part, that filmmaking somehow became a ministry, which is strange in this day and time. But yeah.
If I could just interject here, when Janelle earlier was talking about stories transcending time, uh, that's how I see this. This is the kingdom,
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
kingdom has been around a lot longer than 1830 or
Right.
1765 or
Yeah.
whatever. So it is a story that transcends thousands of years, but it's about the kingdom of Christ, the kingdom of God.
Yes. Yes.
And that just, Janelle, when you were talking about that, I was going to jump in at some point and mention that, and now you framed it
Yes.
perfectly, and Janelle, you explained it perfectly. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
and we've focused here a lot about Kevin and his talents, which are immense. But Janelle is quite the storyteller. As she said, she referred to herself as controversial, but I mean, such a team, such a
Yeah.
team melding of talents. The Lord did this. As I said, I feel just extremely blessed to have been able to. Um, I won't say put this team together, because I believe the Lord put this team together.
I
And
was gonna say, I agree. I agree,
He
Bob.
did
I
that.
mean, I'm sitting here even watching, Nay, and I'm thinking, I am so thrilled that Bob connected with her and she began to help you the way that she did. Because to be honest, I don't know if we would have been able to help in the way that we are now, because we're able to focus now on the bigger part that we need to be focusing on now. But I mean, Nay has been just, and Cloudy has just been amazing, and everyone's giftings coming in. I mean, Nay has just been kind of helping to, keep this ball rolling on all these other aspects of it, and keeping communication open with everyone, which has been great. I don't know if I, to be honest, would have been able to do that. And it probably would have maybe even caused this project to suffer a bit, because I don't have a lot of the same giftings that Nay has. She's very organized, and has things put together really well. That is not my strong suit right now in my
Oh,
life, at all.
stop,
But
stop.
I just
Yeah.
feel like that I agree with both of you, where you see where God just put everyone's talents together. And it's amazing to kind of watch everything just rolling along the way that it should. Um, and it wouldn't have happened if God hadn't connected us all. And it's really strange too, because all three of us have been Facebook friends for a while.
Yeah,
Kind of
we have
surreal,
been.
actually, when you think about it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And
if I could add one more thing, I
yeah.
do hope that our team changes paradigms. You know,
Absolutely.
I'm an old white Southern man.
Yeah.
So in many people's minds, I'm a racist. I'm an old white conservative man from the South.
Yeah.
And you have no idea how many people will just automatically label me as a racist because
Yeah.
I'm conservative.
Yeah.
And so I hope the relationship that we have, the way the team came together, will just uh, shatter paradigms.
Yes.
And again, if that happens, I believe that will be the work of the Lord. So
Amen to
Absolutely.
that.
Amen
Yes.
to that. So, Bob, thank you so much. Janelle, thank you again for the
thank
amazing
you, Nay.
interview. Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
our thanks go out to Kevin as well. Hopefully, he can join us for a future
Yes.
directors dialogues. And listener,
Yes.
you too can help us change paradigms with this film. So, if you are interested and you want to help with Oasis in Atlanta, share this director's dialogue, share the film, visit bobshands.com. We'll put a link in the comments below. Share this far and wide, but also if you really want to help us to change paradigms, visit us at Give Send Go and help us make this happen. We appreciate your prayers, your donations, your support. We appreciate everything, your feedback on the trailer, the beautiful gorgeous trailer that Janelle and Kevin have already prepared for us. So thank you to the both of you for being a part of this journey and being a part of this film. We're highly anticipating the launch in January 2026. So, listener, if you've stuck on for this long, thank you so much for watching. And we will follow up with the next episode of our Directors Dialogues. Again, we wish you well and look forward to the next episode.